All right, so let's make a bone or an armature for this wheel assembly. So I'm going to select this one, do Shift D, move it over here, and I'm going to take this sphere, select it first, and then select the upright and do Shift S, selection to active, and I'm going to drag this sphere out a little bit, so just past the parking brake there. All right, I'm going to take the sphere and I'm going to apply its rotation. And then I'm going to take the wheel rigid body and the upright rigid body and then shift select the armature. Then come into pose mode and select this main bone and say Control P. And I'm going to parent it to the bone like that. And go back into object mode and let's test it out. So now if I move this one, I can change kind of the angle of the wheel. And if I move this one, I can move the position of the wheel. So that's the way that's supposed to work. All right. Let's do the same thing for the control arm. So I'm going to come into a top view. I'm going to move my cursor to this hinge, Shift S, or axle, cursor to selected. Then I'm going to use this one, Shift D, and I'm going to move this sphere there. So Shift S, selection to cursor. I'm going to move it so that it's a little bit more right at the end there, and then move this part of it and move it to the end like that. All right, and then I'm going to parent the hinge to, or the axle, to this bone. So I'm going to select the armature and then go into pose mode, select the bone, say Control P, and bone. Okay, now the hinge should be moving like that. Now I need another armature. I'm going to take this one, Shift D, move it over here. I'm going to move it to my cursor, Shift S, selection to cursor. Then I'm going to move this to the ball joint, Shift S, selection to active, like that. All right, I'm going to parent this main empty here to the bone of this armature. So Control P, bone. And then I'm going to take, let me go back into object mode. I'm going to take the control arm and parent it to the main bone of this armature. Control P, bone. So now if I move this, it should move everything around. If I adjust this, it should kind of rotate that stuff around. And I should be able to move this independently of that. So that's the way you'd want to align it. You want to align this sphere and this sphere and then the outboard sphere. All right, so that was a little difficult. Let's do an easier one, which is the shock. I'm going to use this vertical one, Shift D, and I'm going to shift select this lower ball joint and then Shift S, selection to active, and the same thing with this upper one to here, Shift S, selection to active. All right, now I'm going to parent these two rigid bodies to the main bone here. Like that. Oops. So now it should move like that. All right. All right, let's use a horizontal one for the steering. Shift D, move it to here. Shift S, selection to active, and move this to this one, Shift S, selection to active, and then I'm going to parent the steering motor and the steering rack rigid body to this main bone here. Bone. All right. And let's do our independent steering next. So I need two of these. I'll just bring one over here for now. All right, so I'm going to select this, move it to here, and then I'm going to move this one to here. And then I'm going to parent the rigid body and the steering motor to this bone. Go to pose mode, select that bone, Control P, and bone. And let's get another horizontal one. Oops, let me go back into object mode. And Shift D, come up here, move it closer. All right, I'm going to move this to here. And move this to here, like that. And we want to parent this to the main bone here. Main bone. And let's go back into object mode. All right, we want to select this armature. And we want to parent it to this alignment sphere. So Control P, Object Keep Transform. Now we can delete this alignment sphere. All right, so now it should work like this. You should be able to move the whole thing with this sphere. You can adjust this with that alignment sphere, and you can move this anywhere you want, like that. All right. So I think that's it. But before we quit, let's make sure that everything is in the right collection. So I'm going to select all of the wheel parts here, move to collection, collection, wheel, select all these parts, move to collection, collection, control arm, select all these parts, move to collection, to the shock, select all these parts, move to collection, the steering, and all of these parts to the independent steering. All right, so now everything should be set up. I'm going to save it. And that should be it for this.